everyone. Welcome to the Identity Security Solution Show, the one place where you're going to get the latest and greatest on the SailPoint product portfolio. I'm Jaishree Subramania, and joining me today is Dan Martillotti, our Senior Director of Product Management. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure as always.
That's awesome. As your identity security program evolves, and as it is evolving, right, it's important to gain context on critical content to help lock down that sensitive information as the foundational piece of your security program. I'm sure you'll all agree with me that data is ultimately what you're trying to protect and govern. So as you know, our topic today is data access security. This is a product that we launched a few quarters ago. And Dan, so let's start with this, right? Yep. What are some of the challenges organizations are facing today when it comes to governing and protecting their data?
Yeah.
What are the core capabilities of data access security?
Yeah. So when you think about governing access to data within the organization, the real problem is not understanding what data resides where within the organization, right? If you've got a SharePoint directory, for example, and you've downloaded information about accounts within your organization and you share that, that may be available to a broader audience than what you had anticipated. So being able to understand what kind of sensitive data resides within the organization, what kind of data is within those unstructured files. And when we say unstructured files, we mean Word documents, we mean PowerPoint presentations, we mean Excel files, or images, right? Being able to see what's happening within those files and understanding who has what permissions to those allows you now to understand where your risk resides within the organization and really focus in and make sure that people have the right access to the right data, very much like we talk about the right access to the right applications and the right entitlements.
Right time as well.
Yep, exactly.
Perfect. And so what's the difference between structured and unstructured data?
Yeah.
And why should organizations care about this
Yep.
in this context of identity security?
Yep. So unstructured data, like I said, is really the data that you've taken out of an application or that you've created organically. It's a Word document. It's an Excel file. It's a PowerPoint. And even files can be embedded within a PowerPoint. We've seen cases where there was an Excel file embedded in a PowerPoint file, right? And the data within the Excel file contained sensitive data, but nobody knew it because the way that it was used within the PowerPoint file didn't expose that. So being able to see inside those files and understand what's there is important, right? So that's unstructured data. Structured data is, a database, something that resides within a data lake or within a traditional database. We focus today with data access security on what's in unstructured data.
Awesome. Pretty powerful, right, in terms of what we can do in that context of identity security. And that's something that we really focus on.
That's right.
So Dan, I want to sort of dive into something that we keep hearing about in the market right now, right? That is data loss prevention solutions in the market today. Can you share how this sort of fits into identity security?
Yep.
What's actually working? How are they successful? What are the pitfalls? What's not working?
Yeah, so I would look at DLP solutions as being complementary to what we do from a governance perspective, right? DLP systems are about making sure that things don't exfiltrate the system or the environment that you've got defined. But they don't do a great job of how do I govern the access within my environment? And that's what data access security focuses on. Complementary to what we do with Identity Security Cloud, working together, it's helping you identify what kind of access exists within the organization, who has access to what kind of data, and how that data is being used within the organization. There was a study that I saw recently where as people are leaving companies, they don't feel bad about taking data that they had created within that organization with them. Understanding who has access to what data within the organization gives you some of that protection.
That's really good to know, right? So it's something that is growing really fast as well, right? So how can better context of sensitive data help organizations govern and lock down what data as part of what they're doing today?
Yep. So when you think about governing from an identity security cloud perspective, we look at all of the roles and entitlements that you have assigned to you and how that grants you access within the organization. What you miss in a lot of cases is the effective access that's associated with that role or that entitlement. For example, if I have a role that grants me access to an AD group, within that AD group, It's a file structure. There may be files in there that contain sensitive data, right? It could be credit card information. It could be PII information. It could be financial information. With data access security working side by side with Identity Security Cloud, we can show you that effective access and help you understand what roles and entitlements, what they're granting you access to within the environment so that you can make the best decisions on whether or not someone should have that access.
Okay. So Dan, I'm going to bring up file access
Yeah.
management. Where does that sit?
Yeah, so File Access Manager is still a viable product. We're still investing in it, right? It was designed for customers who wanted to run data access governance in their environment, very much like Identity IQ, right? I can install File Access Manager in my data center. I can run it in a cloud environment, a private cloud environment, but it's very much a standalone system. It's got a light integration with Identity IQ, where data access security was designed from day one to be fully integrated with Identity Security Cloud. So you get that tight integration and you're able to see that effective access very naturally within the system.
That's perfect. I'm so glad, we sort of,
Yeah.
sort of touched on this. Now, my favorite question and the last question, looking ahead.
Yep.
Give us a teaser
Yeah.
in terms of what's coming up when it comes to data access security.
Sure. So as you said, we launched data access security a couple of quarters ago at Navigate, right? So we focused our initial release on being able to perform data classification for information that's sensitive but not private, right? Not regulated data. And we focused on Office 365, right? So we could tell you what kind of permissions were out there and what kind of data was in that mapping. We're expanding our use cases now to be able to cover regulated data, and we're expanding our coverage of applications. So outside of Office 365, we'll be adding additional cloud-based data storage systems. But the other reality is network-attached devices, their data storage systems that exist today, are still very popular in lots of organizations. So while customers are transitioning to the cloud, when it comes to sensitive data, those kinds of devices are still very important. So we'll be building connectors to be able to connect to those same network devices and to be able to provide all the capabilities of data access security. We'll also be expanding into looking at activity, what's happening with those files, so that you can make decisions and make responses based on what's happening with that data. That also leads us to be able to look at, is data stale, right? Do I have a copy of data that's not being used by people within the organization? And if so, we should remediate that to reduce risk, right? And then longer term, we'll be looking at how do we move from unstructured data into structured data, begin to connect and govern access to data within those types of environments. So we're doing research now to understand how that's different than what we do with unstructured data, and then we'll be building out those capabilities going into next year.
Lots of good, exciting things coming up,
Yeah.
right? So if you look at this, with limited visibility into where sensitive data is and who has access to what, the task of satisfying those strict regulatory requirements that you have is growing more complex. And this is where we come in. So Dan, thank you so much for sharing more details about data access security and the capabilities that we have, and lots of new exciting things coming up as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. To learn more about SailPoint and our product portfolio and to listen to more such shows, join us at sailpoint.com. Thank you.